Hi everyone and welcome to this session of GETDigital. My name is Niamh and I'm an assistant professor here in DCU Business School. I'm delighted to be your MC for this session. Throughout this week in GETDigital, we're exploring a range of topics around business, leadership and entrepreneurship with a particular focus on how businesses of all stages and all sizes can harness transformational digital technologies to achieve their business goals. Turning to this session now, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers, Cormac McCann, who's the Creative Director at Pluto, and Deirdre O'Sullivan, a Senior Account Manager at Pluto, who'll be together talking about their #100 consent, how Pluto and DRCC leverage TikTok to reach a younger audience. Just to our audience today, we'd love to receive your questions. Please submit them during the session using the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. Just be aware that the chat function is disabled for this session, so please only use the Q&A option. We'll then compile the questions and I'll ask Deirdre and Cormac to cover as many as they can in the time that we have available to us. We're looking forward to your questions. And again, just finally to remind you one more time, Q&A is disabled. So without any more, chat is disabled, Q&A is very abled. Without any more hesitation, I'll pass you over to Deirdre and Cormac to talk through their extraordinary campaign.
Hi, I'm Cormac, I'm Creative Director. Great to talk to everyone today. Working with DRCC last March. I mean, I can't believe it's been a year already. It was a pleasure to work with them. The campaign was kind of the first of its kind in the fact that we sort of opened the doors to the wonders that is TikTok, and we became instant overnight TikTok addicts. But it was a massive learning opportunity for us as well in how to interact with Gen Z, who are those 16 to 22 year olds. So it was a real learning, and we were really happy with how this campaign. So I look forward to sharing a little bit with you now in a few minutes.
Thanks, Cormac. Yeah, as Cormac said, we became TikTok addicts maybe Christmas last year. We had everyone's head wrecked in the office talking about trends and dances, and it all came to fruition when DRCC came to us and asked us to work on a campaign around consent, which we were delighted to work with them on. We worked on this last March, or was executed last March. We'll talk a little bit about a workshop that we did, which was on the 6th of March, and a week later we were all in lockdown. So we got in pretty good timing on this one. I just want to say a little bit about us. So in Pluto, we are a creative agency and we work across various different campaigns for brands and organizations. We pride ourselves on creating compelling content to build true audience connections. We have a full service studio for design. We have a digital department. We would have done a lot of live events, but as everyone else has, we've pivoted to hybrid and virtual events, and we can't wait to get back in the live event game again soon. We also work with creators, or as they're known, influencers, and we work with them to build content for the campaigns that we work on. Just a little bit about the DRCC and their mission. So the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre is, their overall mission is to prevent the harm and heal the trauma of rape and other forms of sexual violence. So it was the preventative work that we were focused on, and that was part of our brief. So through their prevention work, they do policy and research, education and training, and a lot of awareness campaigns. And the channels that were available to us and them were their website, social, through Instagram and Twitter, their newsletter, direct outreach and media. So that's kind of what they were doing at the time when they came to us. And we in Pluto have a lasting relationship with DRCC. We would have worked a lot with them on fundraising events in the past. We were really excited when they came to us with this brief, as it meant we could kind of employ more of the talents that were really dear to us and that we enjoyed doing. So why was the focus on consent? So as I mentioned there, the mission of the DRCC is to heal the trauma and prevent the harm of sexual violence. And sexual violence in general can be turned on its head if everybody understands what consent is. And for those who don't know, consent is defined as a voluntary agreement in a relationship with equal power to engage in sexual activity. And it is explicitly defined in the law, but there are always complicating issues. So you hear a lot about the grey area of consent, about rape myths, about the understanding of consent and how different groups have different pathways to understanding it. And I suppose one of the groups that we wanted to focus on was, as Cormac mentioned, Gen Z, so young people aged 17 to about 22, 23, 24. And this is the group that are informing themselves on sex and relationships. They're finding out about sex through their peers, through school, through college, unfortunately a lot through pornography. And even though they understand consent, even if they do understand consent, they might not have the language or the confidence to express it clearly with themselves or with the person they're engaging with. Of DRCC's strategy, they want to build greater recognition of the law and throughout society of the key role of consent. And they do that through youth programs, curricular reform in universities and schools. They do a lot of campaigning and outreach with students' unions, youth organisations and youth workers. So the goal ultimately in their strategic plan is to build conversation around consent and communication. So what did that mean for us? So the challenge was to create awareness and educate young people around the topic of sexual consent and to create a conversation. And to do that in an engaging and non-patronising way. So if you think about the objectives of our campaign, we wanted to address consequences of non-consensual encounters in a thought-provoking way. And we wanted to reach a high volume of young adults by using messaging and language that was relatable to them. We needed to do this in a new way. So we wanted to kind of be disruptive and do something that DRCC had never done before. We wanted to create a basis for further awareness with this age group over a long period of time. DRCC asked us to engage particularly with young men, which was something we kept in mind with this campaign. And we wanted to be able to steer this group towards DRCC information channels. So that included their Instagram, their Twitter, their website, and their national helpline, which is available to anybody who has suffered sexual violence, or if they have a concern or if they have a question. So we wanted young people to be aware that that was available for them too. And just to mention, we had to do this all kind of on a shoestring because it was pro bono work from Pluto, but the resources available to DRCC were very tight as well. So it was done on a shoestring.
So to talk a little bit about Gen Z, like I said, this was a massive learning process for us. We did a lot of research. We were lucky to have a few Gen Zers working with us, far removed from my age group. So there's a couple of things that are key. Commercially, if there's anyone here who works for a brand or works in marketing, you can take these for free. But so no matter what you're trying to consume or sell, I suppose, to communicate with Gen Z, you have to use a media they consume. So this is why TikTok was almost an instant for us, because while they are on Instagram, they don't use it in the same form as they use TikTok, whereas TikTok is highly engaging about making content. They do have an Instagram presence, but if you're doing something where you need engagement, you're kind of basically what we're saying is, if you can't communicate to Gen Z through their platforms, you're wasting your money. And we could have missed the mark very easily on this one. The messaging then has to be native to the platform. So, I mean, a famous thing everybody's saying at the moment is don't make ads, make TikToks. So you can't just crowbar something that works on TV or even works on Facebook and Instagram. You can't just repost that on TikTok. It has to be, and that's the same for Instagram, it has to be native content to that platform, so it's not jarring. So when they see it, they don't just go ad, they actually are engaged. And then the other thing is to communicate that message. If you are using content creators, and we do this commercially, is we don't necessarily give down the script. We don't write the content. We actually go to the creators, and the creators have to deliver the message in their own personal style. And you'll see that in some of the videos we created for 100 Consent. So Gen Z, and this was a very particular for the male, to bring the males into the fold, is they certainly don't like being told what to do. It has to be two-way traffic. If anything comes across as accusatory or blaming, where young men felt they were being attacked, and once they feel they're attacked, they're on the back foot, and then they're quiet. And then on the media they consume, they don't just want cheap thrills and laughs. They're actually looking for content with purpose. They actually like to see things that are relevant to them, that have meaning. It's not all just shits and giggles and dances and skits. They actually like to see content, like they want to know what's going on out there in the world. And the other thing about Gen Z is they listen to their peers. So they don't care what Bono says. They don't care what some famous footballer says. They don't care what some traditionally famous influencer says. They want to hear from their peers. It's like, you know, in marketing, you know, it's you know, person to person marketing. They trust people who are the same age, people who they relate to. And that's why we found such a great market with TikTok creators, because their followers are already invested in them before they became TikTok famous. And then finally, or with Gen Z, is whatever you think about Gen Z, you're wrong. Never make any assumptions about them. You know, we learned this the hard way in commercial ventures with the Gen Zers. You got to go and talk to them. You got to find out from the horse's mouth. Do your research, because if you think they're doing one thing, you're probably wrong. Just assume you're wrong. That's the only safe assumption, is that you're wrong. And then the other thing is, finally, as we saw with, you know, gender equality, Black Lives Matter, is that actually these Gen Zers really want to be part of a movement. They're very altruistic. They want to fight the wrongs in the world. You know, last time in March, you know, compared to the wasteland that is Twitter, TikTok was a really nice place to be, where people were really supportive, positive, anti-bullying, anti-discrimination. So if you give them a movement to get behind, they'll do it. And that's what we tried to do with 100 consent. Such a mouthful when I say it. Anyway, the campaign. So 100 consent, as we said, which was a little bit different to broader campaigns that DRC has done. This is really a preventative campaign, and it's all about consequences. So the long form of it was, things can end badly when you don't think of the consequences. Be 100% or it's not consent. Okay, so that's what it is. We're saying, if you're even 1% unsure about something, don't do it. If there's any doubt, don't do it. We're not blaming anybody, but everybody's responsible. Even though consent is not a gray area, it is misinterpreted. So the only way we could say is, if you're not 100% sure, if they're not 100% sure, don't do it. Think of the consequences. This is the kind of stuff that ruins people's lives. So we rolled it out in two legs, if you want to call it. First was with support of digital assets that we could sort of create the conversation, that were jumping off points for our creators, and that some people could reference, you know, in a slightly more traditional way. And then the second part was to engage the TikTok creators. And as Dee said, what's important to remember here is we had 22 creators took part. Like, they didn't charge anything. I would say nearly 90% of them are now professional creators. So you wouldn't get them for free anymore, but we got in early days. So just, it's really important that shows that they are really altruistic and they wanted to help. And they really were an inspiring bunch. So I'm just going to show you first how we worded some of the digital assets. So this is really important. Like, no problem saying the early concept for this campaign was, you wouldn't eat a wild mushroom or you wouldn't jump into shallow water. But the Gen Zers are more concerned about their reputation or being embarrassed than actually they are about breaking a leg. So this is why I had to never assume. So we wanted to use language what they would understand, because it's all about consequences. Made them think about something. Oh, you would never do that. You would never do this. So why would you get into some, you know, sexual activity if you weren't sure? Because there's other things in life where you weren't sure. So again, would you let your mates write your dating profile? Something a Gen Z would never do. I'm just going to go through another few of them here. So these are all assets that lived on Instagram, because it wasn't just solely on Instagram. This was sort of a cross-platform campaign, but these were just sort of things that we spoke to the TikTokers on today. You know, like, would you wear your new runners to a festival, or would you add your mom to your group chat? Very simple things, you know, and things can end badly when you don't think about the consequences. So we try to make as simple a message before as possible, but in Gen Z language. So hopefully, I think they came across well, because I didn't write them anyway, so don't worry about that. And then the big question I'm sure that we get asked all the time is, why did we go to TikTok? A couple of months before this campaign, I didn't know what TikTok was. I knew what Musical.ly was because of a young niece, and I'd done a few things and I didn't really understand. I didn't understand the power of it. But when I actually went in and saw how highly engaged, like the comment sections, the shares, the fact that people create their own content, we knew it was a great place for us. And organizations, they have an opportunity on TikTok to be authentic. It's not a TV ad. You know, they can be a little more honest. They can connect easier, and they can be inclusive. So if you've something positive to say, or you've something about your brand, you can get in a share. You know, it's, like I said, it's not a passive platform, and it's a fun place to be. So obviously, as you see, our challenge was, how do we bring something as serious as consent to the TikTok format, which is actually just generally, you know, fun and positivity. But what we had to do is we had to get the TikTok creators in to show us how it's done, because we didn't know. We didn't want to see them again. And I can just give you some stats about TikTok to show where we are currently. So I think at the moment there's 1.5 million active TikTok users in Ireland. There was 900,000 this time last March, and it exploded in lockdown because everyone was at home doing TikTok. Me and Dee were on home on TikTok all day anyway, so we were already glued to it. The engagement rate was 12%. I'll probably throw out a wild figure here, whereas I think on Instagram it's around 2%. And what engagement rate is basically, you work it out by its likes, shares, comments, engaged content. So I think you do a figure compared to the views, but it's high. That's all I can tell you. So like 12% is astronomical for a social media platform. You know, there are 7.1 million videos being made every week in Ireland. You know, people spend, this can't be right though, 78 minutes a day on TikTok. I'm sure it's higher than that. And there's almost an even split, 41% male, 59% female. And as you can see there, 25 to 34 is 22%, but the 18 to 24 is 40%. But older people are using TikTok. But at the time, it was certainly a 16 to 20s thing, which was exactly what we wanted to hit. So I'll go through now a little bit what we did. So what we did, and this was no mean feat, and you know, this is where basically Dee did an unbelievable job, because getting 22 creators together is extremely difficult. You know, we had to do due diligence and vet, and we had to make sure they had no controversial content, that they had no, you know, that they didn't say stuff that was problematic. And
find them besides trawling through the app itself.
Yeah.
At the time of Ireland's best TikTokers, or it just didn't exist. So it was many hours spent scrolling and finding, and it was good fun. I think we found the right ones, which was good. Yeah,
absolutely. We found people who not only had large followers. I mean, Jacob at the time, I think he had nearly 900,000 followers, and he's just a young guy from Monaghan. You know, it's crazy. But they're all really good communicators, and that their content was really unique, and they spoke to their followers. And we knew that they would have that peer-to-peer trust. So that's Nolene Blackwell in the middle, who is a legend, and she got on so well with the creators. So we had her there on the day. Like, obviously, vitally part of this campaign was it's an education piece. So we brought these 22 TikTokers together for sort of a workshop on consent. We had an independent facilitator called Dave Dunn, he was brilliant. He really was brilliant. You know, because to get them to keep their attention, obviously we had to take their phones off them, which we gave them back at lunch and after at the end of the day. But there was a team there from DRCC, like they had done stuff about consent in school, but largely the feedback that we got that actually they really hadn't done that much on it. So we did all sorts of topics like the scale of agreement, the power of social influence. you know, basically we had to talk to them about what was their power, like how do they feel about having the weight of this campaign on their shoulders. So we did various stuff, workshops during the day. We were all involved. Like, I mean, I was blown away by the maturity and the levels of effort that they put in. And then at the end of the day, and just to show you, again, if people are thinking about working on TikTok commercially, they're so agile. And I think they had created a group video an hour after the day it ended. Like they are just so quick, and it's so natural to them. And then they all went on to make their own individual content, and then we got replies and stuff. So I'm going to show you a video now, which really explains more, and then a couple of examples of the type of content. Oh, sorry, mostly important, almost really most important. One of the goals, maybe that we didn't allude to earlier, was that we wanted to create a national conversation about the DRCC and consent. So it was really important that this was spoken outside of TikTok, and that the attention was brought to these creators. So we had a PR team from Book and Hound who they took unbelievable photos, but they got us into places that really we weren't expecting. So we got on RTE, we were on the radio, we were on the news, we were on hundreds of websites, we got massive loads of hits on social. And actually that was a vital part, because we promised these creators, and we were basically promising these young people that we would give them a voice. And that voice, it's not just, it has to go beyond their internal peer group. Like, you know, it really meant a lot for the creators who helped us to see their faces on the news, to see in their local newspaper. And that was actually really vital. And I think without the pure piece, I don't think it would have had the power and resonate across all age groups. Because I mean, we had sort of a collateral group where, you know, there was parents who saw this and then would go and talk to their kids about consent. So it was 90% down to young people, and then we had an amazing overflow down for other demographics.
Today, as part of #100consent with the DRCC, we're working with Ireland's biggest TikTokers, and we've brought them here to go through consent, understand consent, because they are so important. They're the ones who need to continue to have these conversations. It's the age demographic that we're hitting, 16 to 24s, and just to hammer home that consent is something that should be explored freely and positively.
Coming in, I was really nervous. I was like, who am I going to meet? Like, seeing all these creators behind a screen and then coming face to face with them in real life. I'm looking forward to coming up with new ideas and how we're going to express this through the TikTok platform, especially at a workshop like this, and actually digging into what consent actually means.
I'm aware that majority of my followers are under the age of 17, so I want to use my platform to bring awareness to this. I know sex is a very awkward thing to talk about, but I also know a lot of young people are having it. If you're not 100%, then it is not consent.
Magic happened when the TikTokers were brought in to the room, because they brought in their enormous communication skills. They have over 2 million followers and fans between them. They're very conscious of their fans. They're doing something they never did before, which is focusing on a social justice campaign. And with them has come a real energy and a real vindication of the need to put more out there about consent.
Such a fun day. Everyone's been really collaborative in what they wanted to do, and I think it's going to be really positive for young people watching to see that consent, while it is a serious topic, can be approached in a way that's informal and means something to everyone and lets everyone join in the conversation.
And it went like
So we've a couple of. So it's really hard to explain about without showing a video of the content. So they all made their own piece of content that was unique, and like you could see, the second one we'll show you is a guy, Little Mush Kyle, who, you know, his content is about FIFA and football. So for him to come out and talk, you know, in a way that consent, you know, makes sense for his followers, you're going to see like how they interpreted it. And the first one there is Fanula J, who you probably knows, who's all over the place now, and another girl, Mallarina, who her stuff was largely about fashion and life, or, you know, stuff like that. So it was amazing to see the unique way that they all brought it to life. So I'm going to play these videos for you now.
Hi, my name is Fanula. I'm going to explain 100% to you in 60 seconds and hopefully also do my makeup. Consent doesn't necessarily start when you start kissing someone, and it doesn't necessarily stop when you get married. 100 consent is asking people to check in with themselves, whatever they're doing with someone, and to make sure that they're 100% and that the other person is 100%. Because if you're even 1% unsure, there could be drastic consequences for you, the other person, or both. In the same way that the light keeps changing while I record this video, our situations with people can change too. Check in with yourself, check in with the other person, because if it's not 100%, it's not consent.
Line around the corner, line them up the block and over. Sometimes I even stop the smoking when it's time to focus. My shade, Dior, my pants, velour. Create, explore, expand, concord. I came, I saw, I came, I saw.
That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel.
Hi, my name's Fanula.
Oh, so yeah, so just as you see, like, I mean, Kyle's was only 15 seconds long. He was saying you wouldn't turn up for football without your football boots. You wouldn't do anything someone you didn't want to do. So it's the same for consent, you know, like Mallarina's had a dance which was I don't, did I now say on trend? Which was a trend, you know, that's TikToky, like that's TikTok content. So that, you know, people aren't going to go, you know, on TikTok if you lose them in the first 5 seconds, but they're like, oh, this is typical to Mallarina, and then, you know, they're actually finding out. So yeah, unbelievable results, because this was pro bono campaign, and at the time TikTok was so new in Ireland that we actually couldn't put paid content behind it. So this was 100% organic reach. So to date, we have 2.2 million views of the hashtag of the content we've created. Our influencers have a reach of over 3 million, 135,000 likes. The average engagement rate is nearly 12%. We round that up, and we only created 32 posts. And then that's not to mention, part of our campaign was that we would hope that people would then, we had a call out to say, you know, create your video about what consent means. So we got loads of other content that came from us, from other people. And then we got 5.2 million media impressions, 288 pieces, mentions on social. And the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre had then impressions of 4.4 million over the course of the campaign, with 388 mentions on social. I mean, that all of this for a campaign that basically the cost was loads of hours volunteered by us, and basically travel expenses. So for an organic campaign to reach 2.2 million views, not just views, let alone the engagement rate, is astronomical. And it was, you know, we were, as Dee was saying, a week later we were in lockdown, so this wouldn't have happened. And so Dee is going to tell you a little bit about how much it actually was benefited DRCC.
Yeah, so the RCC reported that their website traffic rose over the campaign. So in March, the visitors were up 66%, sessions were up 55%. There was a shift in demographics in that the male share of the users was up from the previous quarter. There was more younger users, so that was up from 13% to 23% in users aged 18 to 24. Anecdotally, then there were more younger callers being supported on the national helpline. The social channels that already existed for DRCC were up, so that's Instagram and Twitter. And then there was also the fact that they could use these videos going forward in their other education campaigns and for training. So when they go into colleges or schools, it's helpful for them to be able to use the TikToks and to connect with young people and to show that they are really willing to listen to them where they are. Some other outcomes were that TikTok was now a new vehicle for DRCC to reach younger people, and they could kind of reshare the content that the creators made. There's 32 pieces of original content created across that week, which DRCC can continue to use across their platforms. As I said, the helpline calls were up, and that's important for DRCC because they want to, everybody is welcome to have support through the helpline. And what they really enjoyed about this campaign was that it was positive, non-judgmental, which is obviously in line with their values and mission. The creators were encouraged after the consent workshop to interpret the brief how they saw it for their audience. So even though we educated them on the topic of consent, they were able to break it down into a way that they understand and a way that they could teach other people to understand. So the uptake and the response really showed that it is vital to reach out to young people where they are. There is a value in working with established TikTokers, as much as we don't want to admit. These guys have audiences that we need to tap into, and working with them on a level that they're happy to work with us on really works for us. So we collaborate with them rather than telling them what to do or being very prescriptive, and that works across the board on any brand or organization campaign. And the appeal of TikTok is really that young people get to use their own voice and their own ideas, and that's something that we really embrace. So if you spend any time on TikTok, you'll see the ads that don't really work, or the engagement rate's quite low on them because the young people are just scrolling straight past them because they know it's an ad. So yeah, it worked really well for us. I think that's it from us, but we'd be delighted to take questions. I'll stop sharing screen here.
Thanks very much, guys. That was a great presentation and a fabulous campaign and amazing timing as well. It's not many people that you point to and say, gosh, maybe a pandemic did you a favor with that campaign, but it just kind of, you just hit a kind of sweet spot in terms of the medium and the timing and how it all came together. I can see questions starting to come in on the Q&A, and I just encourage you guys to keep posting. Just to start, the first question that we have, this is a completely organic campaign on TikTok. If you were to go at it again and have the budget, would you have put paid spend behind it, or do you think that the campaign worked best because it was organic?
Well, again, it's about for something as meaningful as this, there is a trust level, but we use paid all the time commercially, and we still get high levels of engagement. So the TikTok audience, well, no, actually, we didn't have to put in hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored post because it wasn't an ad, it was a movement. So they sometimes are put off by ad, but I mean, you get amazing return for paid content on TikTok. So the answer is, yeah, we would have definitely. Yeah,
there's different ways that you can use TikTok for ads. So you can have a splash opening ad. So when people open the app, they get an ad straight away, or there's ones that are like hidden when you scroll through. There's like sponsored hashtag challenges. So it might've been something that we would have focused on the hashtag. So because the hashtag 100% was so pivotal to this campaign, it might've been something that we looked at to do a sponsored hashtag so that it would appear on the discovery page. And then the content would fall in under that. So it wasn't available at the time. Also, we didn't have any budget from DRCC. So yeah, I think that, as Cormac said, kind of like a balance between, if we were to boost the content, we still would have gone with the type of content that the creators made. We wouldn't have gone down a very ad-based route. It would have been the content from the creators and then put spend behind that.
Brilliant, thanks so much. And just on those content creators, Somebody's asked about your vetting process, and that really struck me, Deirdre, when you were talking about all those hours of scrolling through trying to identify. How did you vet them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose a lot of the time you have to spend time on their channel, see what they talk about, watch them on their lives, their live Instagrams, and they go live on TikTok as well. So they have discussions live with creators or with their viewers, and they answer questions. So it's about getting a sense of them and seeing what their previous content was. I had phone calls with them all to try and get a sense of them. There were some creators that were not right for it, and they I suppose they just weren't willing to engage with the workshop, which was the most important part for us, because we didn't want to just send a message blindly out to them. We wanted to get them all together so that the DRCC and the education team could really hammer home the importance of the message of consent and how much they had to understand it before they would interpret the brief we were giving them. But yeah, just lots of time. And
yeah, and I suppose part of the day's workshop was to talk about the importance of the content they produce. We gave them, a little bit of a crash course in personal PR and personal branding. So we didn't have to do too much post the event, but we had to watch them very closely. But we no problems.
No problem.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. And I had just a question from somebody just wondering about, for a brand who hadn't used TikTok before that wanted to try something similar, how could they leverage from what you've done, do you think?
I would say, so working with TikTokers because of their age, and even though they are brilliant, but they're not professional. They're TikTokers before they are influencers. So they don't have a background of working with brands. Like, again, the vetting process is really important, so you can't really work with them direct. So we manage a lot of TikTok campaigns. We have a lot of TikTok creators signed to Pluto. So you really need to go through an agency because it's just very difficult to go to them directly. But how you can leverage, if you have a campaign that's youth orientated, it's a perfect channel for you. But also, I would also consider creating your own channel and creating your own content, because you do have the advantage now where you can actually use, you can boost your content, you can create, if you want to call it, ads. So I'd say the first thing you want to do is consider a channel, but also definitely to go through an agency. And like Dee is manages all the creators, so she knows how difficult it can be.
I think as well, like, if this campaign used creators, but you can, like, there's brands out there that are really good at using TikTok because they understand the platform. So a really good example at the moment is Ryanair. So they are on top of all the trends on TikTok. They get so much props from the audience for being able to use the trends right, and it's very obvious that it's somebody of their generation or someone who's engaged with the app a lot. So they're not trying to shoehorn things into the app. They really get it, and it gets, I don't know, it's very well welcomed. And I think sometimes people worry that brands are kind of ruining TikTok, but it's quite small at the moment. And I think when creators work on campaigns that are quite clever and they're quite TikTok based, their audiences don't mind. They don't mind that they're using their platform to promote different products, because it is quite clever and it's not jarring on the platform.
Yeah, one thing that I would say is a bit of a no-no, which is a bit of a lesson for us, is everyone in every ad agency's clients go, can this do something that goes viral or whatever. They're not going to pick up a challenge. Don't set a challenge, or don't do our dance, don't sing our song. If that flops, it's game over. So if you're going to do something like that, you have to work with the creators, because they know what works and what doesn't.
Brilliant. And I suppose that's kind of one of the really interesting things, isn't it? It's that, working with the creators and also trying to control the content. To what extent did you guys vet the content that was produced by your creators?
So as we mentioned earlier, they weren't getting paid for this. So we couldn't be too prescriptive. We did welcome them to share their content with us if they wanted to pass it by us. And most of them did, just to kind of check in with us. We had developed a relationship with them in the process leading up to the workshop, and the DRCC were on hand as well to check their content as well if they wanted us to. Everything that went out, we were like so pleasantly surprised at how well they understood the message. I think that was down to the education team in the DRCC, and we had a really good facilitator as well, and it was quite an open environment where they felt like they could ask, which, you know, is perfect for the consent message anyway. So they had to consent to put up the content. It wasn't something that we forced upon them, and that was, you know, was really important when we were preaching that message, that we practiced it as well.
Yeah. And worth to note, obviously this was last March, in the early doors of, well, I mean, TikTok had been around, but it was certainly the first campaign of its kind. I mean, we've done, I don't know, a lot of commercial campaigns. Like, our commercial vetting and signing off of content is a lot different, you know, because everything has to go through clients. And so people are, the creators are under contract now, you know, because they're getting paid. There's that they have to play by the rules, but they're brilliant. They took it so quickly. So last March and this March, it's a different world in 12 months. So.
Brilliant. And I think that comes back to some of the questions, just highlighting just the novelty of the platform and the difficulty in still working with TikTok, as tools are still relatively crude, I think, compared to other media maybe. Somebody, Cormac, just, I don't know if they picked up on or their mind was running in tandem with yours, but just a question around authenticity. So are brands ruining the authenticity of TikTok? I think that's something you touched on a minute ago.
So the interesting thing about TikTok is the famous TikTok creators that were around last March, like Addison Rae and the D'Amelio sisters, whatever. TikTok created stars themselves to launch. Like, they needed a platform to have stars, so they endorsed these creators. Like the For You page, that was the mystery we had to get our head around. But there are ads that are jarring. For certainly the paid ones, and they'll have 6 million views, but they're very low engagement. If you see an ad, if you can see there's a lot of comments and gets engagement, then it's not. And brands are learning, you know, like, for example, something in TikTok that seems to go down as well is, if you ask a question or if you leave something open-ended, you get engagement. But I mean, I saw some ads where it was just their TV ad reduced to 15 seconds. And if you go to the comments, the followers are saying, what is this? Why am I seeing this? But they are learning. And like, Ryanair is a great one. All the ads all the content we do, we work with creators. So no, it's not ruining, but I mean, there's a lot of shite that is going to pop up on your FYP. It's unavoidable.
Okay, I suppose that a kind of interrelated question. Somebody's asked if you think the brands have too high an expectation coming off TikTok. So are they expecting to have increased sales in their first entry onto the app, and not understanding that the consideration with this audience and age demographic needs to come first?
Well,
educate clients around what's a reasonable expectation, as well as how to use the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what the brand is. I think if there's a brand that's already very well known in this age demographic, they have the opportunity to play around with it a lot more. If it's something that you're asking this generation to consider, then it's a completely different approach. It's more around kind of brand awareness rather than click-throughs or getting them to buy product. I definitely think it is that it needs to come first, that it's the audience and the age demographic first, that you're like, oh, look, so-and-so's on TikTok, they know what they're talking about, they understand us, they understand the stuff we like. So yeah, we've had challenges with brands where they're like, we want to, increase sales on this, and our approach is to, let's get you onto TikTok first, let's float that first and see how you're welcomed and embraced on the app. The paid ads is where you're going to get the likes of a button to click through to a website, or you know, you can start using creators for codes and that, but even those don't really work on TikTok yet because it's still so new, and that's kind of an Instagram thing. And the creators are kind of called out for that when they have codes on TikTok. So it's a balance. It's about, like, we're hoping that, you know, we've lots of clients that are willing to dip their toe in, but trust in the process and trust that TikTok is different than anything they've done before.
Brilliant, thanks very much. It's kind of an interesting one. Somebody's asked what your biggest learning was. Was it working with Gen Z or was it using TikTok?
I just feel very, very old anyway.
It was like, I can tell you, it was, the learning curve went from 100% to, we were about 3 commercial campaigns deep until we, as Dee said, that we realized you had to trust the process. So, you know, we have workshops and brainstorming sessions with our creators when a team comes in. The learning for me, genuinely, yeah, it did make me feel old, because the learning thing was basically that, yeah, everything we think about Gen Z for me was wrong. They're not snowflakes. I think that's a lot of BS, because they, like, working with them on the day, they just had some amazing stories to tell. So they're not snowflakes. They do care. They're not offended by everything. But you know, the thing that surprised me is that they were so like totally different to my generation. Is my generation didn't really, there's a lot of things we just didn't care about. Like the TikTokers, they're so into climate change, gender equality, rights, everything. And that wasn't a learning curve, but it just blew me away, and I was just surprised by that. And maybe I didn't give them enough credit, you know.
I think the thing that we learned as well was just how creative people who do well on TikTok are. So some of the other apps, like Instagram in particular, a lot of people rely on how they look or how they framed the photo and it's photoshopped. And TikTok, people who are the most creative are the ones that get rewarded, and they're funny and they've thought of things from a different angle. So the same trend goes across 2 million videos, but there's 2 million ways to interpret the trend. And it's just been really refreshing to work with young people who constantly think of ideas. Like there's creators who have 1 million followers. They put up a video every single day, and it's different every time. And it's something that they've found that really works for them. And yeah, it's pushed us as well to be more creative, because the solutions that were working before, they just don't work anymore. So we have to constantly go back to the drawing board and think about what's going to work for this campaign. So
yeah, and commercially, there was a massive value to be found in TikTok. You know, the levels of engagement, the amount of views. I mean, what you were paying, you know, a sort of traditional influencer to get, you know, 40,000 views, whatever, versus what you could get, you know, hundreds of thousands of views through a TikToker that's really targeted. I mean, that's the other thing you can target in TikTok. Like the actual app itself, you know, it's really starting to work with analytics and targeting and stuff like that. So it's come a long way. So that what we learned and the value we brought through to our clients was, I mean, you get a lot of bang for your buck here for a campaign.
Brilliant, thanks.
Especially for someone like DRCC who have no budget, like they were still able to be big players in the game. So it wasn't like there was posts going up on Instagram that nobody saw. Like these TikToks were released into the world and people all across the world could see them, and with no spend behind them at all. So it was really encouraging for DRCC to get that many views with no spend.
Do you think you could do the same campaign again? I'm just really struck by the fact that, you know, it's very early days, and you know, I guess your creators really didn't know yet how to commercialize what it was they were doing. So I sort of feel like the learning for them that had later commercial applications, and a learning for you that had later commercial applications. Could you do it on TikTok today, do you think?
Well, there's certainly room for charity stuff or NGO stuff. Like we are currently doing a campaign for the Government of Ireland, where we are getting the same leverage by using creators, but we're also using the paid content. So it's not another 100% organic campaign. No, I don't think so, because.
But I kind of disagree, because I feel like there are if the cause is right, I think it's something that people want to get behind. And as we said, Gen Z are willing to get behind causes. I don't think it would work for, you know, like a brand. You're not going to, you know, to get free content, and neither should you. But if the campaign is right, from the young people that we work with, and there's new creators coming up all the time. Like I find people every week who have, I'm like, Cormac, this lad has 80,000 followers. He had 10 last week, and he's just launched onto the app. So it's so inclusive in that way that, you know, there's new people coming up all the time, and it's not just the elite.
Yeah, it's not Dublin centred either, by the way. That's the big thing from the early days. It wasn't big in Dublin. Like, there's a huge amount of farming content, you know. I wish ploughing was on. I'd have a TikTok stand up ploughing this year if it was on. So that's
that actually does sound like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's a question from somebody who sounds like a Gen Xer like me. Were we not all Gen Z at one time? We all did climate, nuclear, Greenpeace. We just had no mobiles or internet. They're fortunate, and they do give feet, but they do go on to college, marry, lose the care for the cause, and then just another generation comes along. That's a very cynical Gen X, I think.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm scraping into millennial, by the way. Just let that make you laugh. But yeah, of course. But like, it's not that young people weren't like this always. It's that these guys have an influence. So like, again, Jacob, you know, he is a young guy living up in Monaghan, like he's like, this is a guy who can nearly 1 million people are following him. So it's not like 20 years ago he could have had a poster on his wall and gone to a rally. You know, now he can say something and 1 million people are listening. So that's the difference. Like, it's like the power of their influence.
Yeah, and that's something that we try to support them on whenever we work with creators. So we do resilience workshops, and through the team in Pluto, you know, we try to support them in that. And it is a big deal when you have that many people following you and you're getting negative comments, or luckily they're not as bad on TikTok as they maybe are on other platforms. But, you know, we believe in supporting them and for them to realize that there is responsibility with the voice that they have.
Yeah, and a lot of them have gone on to do a lot of other charity stuff independently. So actually, because we follow them, that a lot of them are doing stuff for, like, loads of them did Black Lives Matter content, and, you know, bullying, and they've done other stuff for DRCC. So they've actually all gone on individually to, like, TikTok in general has become slightly more altruistic place since 100% made it okay to talk about things that are serious. Sweeping statement from me there, Dee.
The questions keep pouring in, guys. Thanks so much. I think it's just a measure of how engaged, to use the word, people are with the presentation and the campaign as well. So question, do you think that they'll use this kind of engagement and campaigning when it comes to voting, where they might actually make a huge change? Do you think this is something that maybe political parties could start to think about leveraging?
Yes.
Yeah, send us the checks.
Yeah, like, and again, it's all about making the, like I don't want to give this one away, but they loved Leo last March. They were big Leo fans. I don't know how some of them felt about the Leaving Cert, because a lot of our creators were either doing their Leaving Cert or had just done their Leaving Cert. So they were, you know, they definitely have the power. If you rub this generation up the wrong way, without doing a campaign, you know, there could be a campaign against you if you're not careful. But I don't know, I don't want to bring politics into too much, but probably is the answer, yeah.
I'm sure you'd volunteer to take those campaign checks though, right?
Investing in my account.
Again, just somebody saying if the cause is right, it's something a group of successful creators believe in, it just works. Love that. Great talk. Thanks so much. And a final contribution, just amazing campaign on a very tricky platform. Hard to know how to navigate TikTok as it's emerged so quickly and the paid functionality is relatively young. And I think that just sort of it kind of captures a lot of the kind of questions and comments that are coming through. Just it's an extraordinary campaign. I think you know, it's a lovely cause. It's a great example, I think, of how you can really work with, you know, the natural kind of emerging trends and people within a medium and speak to a particular audience. So I'm going to wrap up here. I just want to thank you both, Cormac and Deirdre, for your time. For a great presentation and actually for really, really insightful answers. I really appreciate you taking the time and engaging in the way that you have done. GETDigital is going to continue. Our next session has Pete Holston, the Design Director at Superunion, and Jake Myrie, the Strategist at Superunion at 3:45. Thanks again to both of you, Cormac and Deirdre. Take care, and we'll say goodbye to everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.